Hey there, I'm Tracy Rigdon, and this is the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. Often random, but always relevant, always real, and practically nothing is off limits. This podcast is for you. Are you ready for this? Let's do it. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Another edition of Wednesday Night Live at the Contrast Project Lounge podcast. Jim won't be joining us tonight, but I still have with me, as always, my co-host, Mr. Charles Gaskins. Charles, how are you doing, bud?
Howdy. I'm all right, yeah. Feeling way better than I was the last few days.
I know. We were just talking, guys, for all of our friends, fans, and followers here. We have been under the weather. All three of us have been under the weather on and off for the past couple of weeks. The cloud finally lifted on my side of the street. Charles is feeling better. And tonight, Jim is on the couch. So, hey, Charles, I'll tell you something. We had the founder of Jacksonville affiliate of Women Writing for Change tonight, Jennifer Wolfe.
It's going to be awesome.
It is. Jennifer, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. I'm just quite pleased to be able to chat with you all from my living room and doing the good work of having important conversations that build community. That's exactly what I am interested in doing.
So when you say having the conversations and building community, and let me tell you something, Jim and I say this all the time. When we do one of these special podcasts, when we do a special episode with someone like yourself that is involved in, your kind of work and therapeutic, whatever it may be. And with you, it's therapeutic, I suppose you would call it therapeutic journaling. But it goes far beyond that. Now, what does the Women Writing for Change do? What is their mission?
Okay, well, good question. And so the answer is that our purpose is to create welcoming circles for people to use writing as a way of becoming more conscious and building stronger community. Mm-hmm. There are lots of ways to do that. You could do it through art. You could do it through poetry. You could do it through podcasting. Our purpose is to build a more connected community through the art and practices of writing. And all types of writing.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, my oldest sister, she does elder arts in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and specializes people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so having them try to write things or doing painting, whether it's finger painting or just drawing and stuff like that. The arts are insanely therapeutic for every human. And so, yeah, I encourage everyone and everything like this.
Well, it's the reason that I have created the platform of Women Writing for a Change is because it works on many different levels. Okay, so first of all, we have all kinds of writers. We have novelists, we have fiction writers, we have poets, we have folks who are writing their memoir, we have folks that just are writers who write every day because there are many folks who simply love to write. And, the journal is always that first place, not always, but for me, it's the first place. And for many, it's the first place that you write. The reason that we're Women Writing for a Change in particular is that it is important for women to have, quote unquote, a room of their own, as we famously quote Virginia Woolf on. And that is because we are living in a society where cyclically the voice of the feminine is suppressed. I've got some strong facts for you to know. So here's a list. I was working on this earlier. Here's a list of the words currently being banned on our government and academic
I think websites. I know where you're going.
All right. So these are just a few now there are hundreds or at least 100 words. Women and underrepresented, underserved, marginalized, inequality, injustice, inclusivity, gender-based violence, gender, inclusivity, females, feminism, equity, equality, equitable. What do we know from that? That this
Yeah.
is I'm calling this a war on women's words. What we're seeing in real time right now, there are a lot of things that are happening. One of the dominant threads is a war on women's words. Here's another important fact that I researched right before I was getting on here, and I've been following this. So PEN America tracks the number of books that are being banned in the United States. 7 of the top 10 books in 2023 and 24 were written by women. So 70%. And in Florida, where there are almost 5,000 books that have been banned in our schools, 72% of the first 250 were written by women.
Wow.
82 titles.
Wow.
This is, so the work that we do here, this subversive act of gathering women and others in a circle and allowing them to write, encouraging them to write, and then listening and sharing, listening to what is shared. This is a radical act in today's world. To listen with integrity and respect, not to comment on quality or content, but to simply give feedback on what patterns were heard. This is a radical departure from what's happening in the real world right now and what has happened in academic. And so, as you can see, there is, as we know, there is a ongoing attempt to suppress the expression of the feminine.
Sure.
And that is in the form of straight up misogyny, but also a kind of terrorism. I'm going to use that word. It's a domestic terrorism. When we have teachers showing Disney films who are being arrested.
Right.
When we have librarians being attacked, and in legal terms, we have librarians eliminated in our schools and our grade schools and our high schools. Who are primarily librarians? Women.
Women, yeah.
When we have a judge in, is it Wisconsin, who is being arrested?
Indicted already.
Yes. So this is a concerted attempt.
And the country's librarian at the Library of Congress.
That's right.
Library of Congress,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Right. And then think about this one. What happened to the president of New College? Right? They took over the entire school. They fired her. They did not allow her to speak until after she was fired. I mean, put all together, and we knew this all very clear. So what does this have to do with me? That is why what I say is that gathering people together and listening to them, having freedom of expression and to be listened to with respect without somebody talking over them, or denigrating what is written through critique, etc. This is a radical act. It's a radical act of love. And that is what Women Writing for a Change is doing. We are creating a radical environment of acceptance and love and consideration and appreciation for each other. So I consider that to be work of the highest degree. And yet, it's small. It's simple. It's just like this podcast in the sense that this is an intimate conversation.
Sure.
We're not trying to be, the number one podcaster in the world, although that'd be great for you. But really, just to have this kind of conversation and the freedom to do it, this is important work.
Well, I think,
yeah,
we're talking about all this, this suppression that's going on, particularly with women. But what we're witnessing now is, they're barreling down the road to take away everyone's freedoms. I wouldn't be surprised. I write a very smart ass, I would say, articles on Substack. They're nothing like this podcast, okay? And I'm very, very critical of the current administration. And there's a lot of
As you
people
should be.
There's a lot of people on Substack that write very critical stuff about this current administration. And I would not be surprised if some of those ones that have larger audiences, like you were saying, the biggest podcast, let's say, for instance, the Midas Touch, the Midas Brothers, the Bull War, a lot of those, I wouldn't be surprised if they start coming after them just because they are, not so friendly with the current administration. And I say current administration, I'm saying Trump and his current administration. And I wouldn't be surprised if podcasts start coming within, in the crosshairs.
Sure.
I mean,
Including,
they're like you say,
no, go ahead.
they're banning thousands of books. So why don't they, he's already threatens to sue the networks because they say bad things about him. He threatened 60 Minutes because he,
Right, yeah.
if something, just like the stuff you say that what you do is small. No, it's large. It's huge. When people, can get together and talk honestly about things that are important with us, and I'm not necessarily politics, but things that are important. However, politics does play into this freedom thing.
Yeah.
What you're doing is huge.
And I think that this is what is important to me about it, is that it takes all of us doing small, intentional, conscious acts of connection and community to stem this tide. So every act of listening respectfully is a radical act, and we can all do that. And so I started this particular affiliate because it is something that I can do with my skill set and the agency that I have. 30 some years ago, the organization was founded in Cincinnati by a school teacher who, similar to today, she was teaching English, and there was a stealth candidate for the school board that was a religious conservative, and he objected to some of the books that his daughter was reading in Mary's class, our founder at Mary's class. And they asked her to not use the book. Now, these were very, very basic writing books, but lifting up the radical idea of women as teachers, women writers as teachers, right? And Natalie Goldberg was one of the authors that they objected to. And she is well known and an excellent writer and teacher. So she said that, thanks very much, I'll start my own school. So she did. She started Women Writing for a Change in Cincinnati. And I have a sister who lives in Cincinnati, and she called me up, and I was at an endpoint with my consulting career, been burned out trying to get corporations to, through the use of PowerPoint, to change their value systems. Yeah. I had enough of PowerPoint, and I wanted more intimate. I wanted more intimate conversation. So I went to Cincinnati, visited with them, and said, yeah, immediately I'm going to do this. And so I made the transition from corporate consultant and facilitator and trainer to a writing facilitator. And the dollars are a lot smaller.
I would say, yeah.
But the work is good and it's deep. It's the value of depth and connection and
meaningful,
vulnerability. Meaningful.
Yeah.
Now, you've worked over the years.
That you can make meaning wherever you work. If you have love and joy for your work and it's meaningful to you, great. We all need change though at times. And so I met a moment that I needed some change. But about 5 years ago, Deborah Reed, who you interviewed on this show, I was friendly with her, and we had some interactions through the writing and art community. I asked her to consult with us a little bit on becoming a nonprofit. And then I asked her to be our first board president. And then, since she is an artist and knows many artists in the community, we decided I was already doing an art show, and I'll tell you the story of that. But we decided to do a big group show in order to raise funds to start the nonprofit. And so that's about 5 years ago when we started the foundation, which is the nonprofit part of
Right.
the
Yeah.
business, which is the majority.
Nice.
And so, but two people that I think I also want to mention, like why do a nonprofit? Previously, this was sort of a thing I did within the structure of my own business. But I went to see a presentation at the library by Hope McMath and Shawana Brooks.
There you go.
And right. And
Two
so
fantastic
they gave
ladies.
me, right. And they gave me the language of the purpose of having a nonprofit and funding this as a nonprofit is to increase accessibility and reach to a more diverse audience. That's why we're doing it. Everything else, I more or less was funding myself. But if this could reach more people and a greater variety of people that don't look like me, for example, then the whole community could support that. And that's what a nonprofit is. It's community support for doing good work.
Tell us a little bit about the Center for Journal Therapy. What role does Therapeutic now? I know, simply, speaking, I know that journaling, some people will journal daily. Some people do it on a part-time kind of basis, maybe just on the weekend when they're sitting on the couch with their cat. But I do also know that in informal settings, like in rehabilitation centers, it's highly encouraged with a lot of the people that are there going through therapy. What role does therapeutic writing play in trauma recovery and transformation?
Right. That's a good question. So I got involved with the Center for Journal Therapy when I first was looking for a career change, and I was responding. I'm a former journalist myself, and I've been keeping a journal since I was 10 years old. So I say journalist as in trained newspaper woman and magazine woman, but also a journal keeper. Because I had a teacher, Mrs. Fern, who gave me a notebook and said, start writing. And so I still have that journal upstairs. So when I was transitioning from the corporate world, I thought, one of my consultants that was in New Orleans that I worked with had just been through a 6-week journaling course. And she said it was really powerful and that her sister-in-law had been certified to do it. And I said, hey, I can get certified to facilitate journaling. And maybe that could be a new career. So I went out and I got certified. Kay Adams is one of the 3 top names in therapeutic writing. And what she studied the work as a psychological, in a psych setting. And she determined that folks that were journaling as part of their therapy improved 50% faster than people that were just showing up. So then she got to figure out, well, what are some really effective journaling techniques? So she wrote a book of 22 different ways to write in your journal. Because a lot of us, again, even if you're a novelist or you're a poet, it starts here and you chicken scratch, but we might rely on the same thing over and over. So to increase your creativity, she gives you a whole bunch of different techniques. For example, you can write a time capsule, do a 10-minute write that captures a particular moment in time. You could write a letter that I do a dialogue in my journal, to somebody and from me. So it goes back and forth. And that's like a deeper level intuitive. So I learned that. But as I said, then I said, oh, I'm going to go teach journaling classes. And then, 2 people showed up and then 0 people showed up. And then one person was like, well, I might need a wider platform. So that's when I found Women Writing for a Change, which already had an infrastructure that I could replicate here. And it was a wide platform for all types of writing. So
you mentioned that you had a background in journalism. How would you say that your background in journalism, informed your facilitation and storytelling approach?
Well, that is an excellent question. Well, you have to love people to do this work. You have to be curious. You have to ask questions. And I am all of those things. I love people and I love to ask questions and I love to hear their stories and I love to tell stories. And so that is the heart interest. But then I have the skills. When I was in journalism school, I was on the magazine track. I had been publishing. I'd worked for a newspaper and had always been interested in design. So I had a skill set that could lead to, for example, this is our annual anthology. And so it is the art and the writing from our writers
Oh,
over
that's
the
nice.
course of a year along a particular theme. So my journalism skills, this represents about 80 artists and writers, about 40 artists, each of whom writes an artist statement, which is like a small story that has to be edited, and then about 40 pieces of writing, which have to be edited, and art, which has to be selected. So I spend 6 months of my year putting this together, which is a labor of love. So, and I'm very particular about
As you should be.
formatting. Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and then we have a number of interns, high school, college interns every summer that get great experience learning how to publish, all the steps
Oh,
involved
that's
from
awesome.
proofing to printing to selection. So here in Jacksonville, they have this is how I put my journalism skills to work.
Thank you.
Very nice.
And this
Very
is
nice.
legacy. You know, they can erase us.
Mm.
They can take the words off the site, but here they are, boys, right there. We
It's
exist.
tangible.
It's tangible. And by the way, this is another radical act because this is a radically inclusive book. If you have been in our circles and you submit writing, I will accept it. I will work with you to edit it. But, you know, one of the ways that we suppress voices is through selection. So
Sure.
Right.
if there's not a pathway to have your work published because of prejudice, you won't be. But so that is what we do.
Now, I was going to
Yeah.
ask you, you just mentioned your, the writing circles. Can you tell us what have been some of the most powerful or surprising moments that you've witnessed in your writing circles?
Sure.
That is a damn good question. I want to hear this answer too.
Hey,
Well, one of the most powerful places that I have seen writing transform people's lives is working down at the jail at the Community Transition Center, which I did for about 5 years until COVID.
okay.
Mm.
And these are women that I would be with over the course of time, 12 weeks. And I would see them and I would document everything that they wrote. And I would see them transform from day one, where they're looking at me quite suspiciously, like, what's going on? What does this lady want me to do? You know, we're passing a bowl of water to, create the circle, and I'm ringing a bell in between to being like, ring the bell, don't forget, ring the bell, and scolding people if they don't do it. So that was tremendous, and I really want to go back and do that. But I think another good example is when the Anne Frank exhibit was at Mosh downtown, and
Mm-hmm.
the docents were having an ending sort of banquet and celebration, and I was asked to come in and do a circle with the docents, and they shared about how Holocaust deniers had come into that space at the beginning of the exhibition and walked through and gotten to the end and said to them, I see that I was wrong and you were right.
Mm.
And thank you for this work. And I was able to hold space for those docents to share their experiences and the very powerful moments of community transformation that occurred because of that wonderful exhibit. And so this is the work that keeps me going, that people are changed. I was just reading a book about writing and how once you interact with something, be careful. After you read this, for example, or after you've been in a writing circle, or even after you've simply read a poem, you're now a little bit different. You've changed your view of the
Sure.
world. And that's powerful. That is very powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
I like how you put that. You know, you were holding space for them, and I was going to ask you too. You know, when you talk about holding space for people, but you already answered the question I was going to ask. I was going to ask you to speak to the importance of holding space for women and marginalized voices in storytelling.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a privilege to be able to do this work. And another thing that I want to mention is that another thing that Hope McMath taught me when I went to an exhibit at the Comer, she said that at that time, this was 2015, 2016, that only 2 to 4% of the art in our national museums was by women.
What? That's it?
Much less people of color. Yes, that's the insider industry
Jesus.
knowledge. Now we're back up to maybe 10 or 12% in some, but the truth is that everything that you know and everything that I know about art and about writing is mostly from a male perspective. And so again, what can I do, one person? So I did an art show. Let's see. I've got an art show in my house right now. I'll turn around and I'll show you what's over my fireplace. Okay. That's a piece about, well, it's a little fuzzy, but that is a piece by Barbara Heineids, the same artist that did this, about immigration. I've got, let's see, there's a wonderful painting up there,
there you go.
By Emily Mitchell, who is one of our Zora Neale Hurston fellows, and this is a painting of her grandmother's bed. So that's the current exhibit, which is Spaces and Places. So what I did was I said, well, if that's representation level in our museums, never mind. I will feature women's art here at my house.
There you go.
And that is not to say that, that we don't love men's art, we don't love men's words, we don't love the male perspective too. But when something is underrepresented, you got to balance the scales. And so
right, yeah.
You know, it just struck me. This really reminds me, and Charles will remember. We recently interviewed Noli Novak, who and you know Noli. Jennifer.
Yeah, she's around the corner from me.
There you go. Well, you were talking about journalism. Well, she was an illustrator at the Wall Street Journal for I don't know 30 years more, and she did the same thing on the show. She showed us some of the paintings on her walls that she had done, some of her illustrations. That was a wonderful conversation too.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
I will say, before we go, and you mentioned something about that book there. Tell me the title of that book one more time.
This one? So our anthology it's called A River Rising Anthology of Women's Voices. And you can go on our website and read more about it. It's womenwritingjacksonville.org. If you look up women writing in Jacksonville, you'll find a zillion things about it.
First link.
And you can actually purchase the anthology right from our website. But we are also going to have a show at FSCJ next Tuesday at the Kent campus from 6 to 8 p.m. and that will have the art from this anthology.
Oh, nice.
It's a metamorphosis.
That would be great.
I'm a 4-minute walk away from there, so I need to walk over there.
That I would love to see you in person, Charles. That would be great.
I'm much more gorgeous in person.
Okay.
There you go.
Me too.
There you go. Now, and you mentioned you actually used the word about that book, and that's why I wanted to ask you the title of it again. But you mentioned the word legacy. What legacy do you hope to leave? Do you personally hope to leave, not just as a writer, but as a community builder, a teacher, an advocate, a space holder?
That if I can do it, you can do it too.
There you go.
That we all have this capacity. It is our privilege to be able to, and an honor to do work that is good for this world, and anybody can do it.
The true punk rock ethos. Yeah, DIY.
That's amazing. It's been a joy having you with us, Jennifer. I tell you, I knew we were going to have a good conversation. Charles, have you got any closing thoughts for us?
not a closing thought, but with talking about women in the arts, I'm going to move my iPad so you can see something. My entry hole of my house, the first thing you see is it's a screen printing by a Detroit artist that goes under the name Niagara. And I don't know if you're familiar. And let's make sure you can see it. I don't know. It
Awesome.
says,
Yeah.
if I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you. And it's actually, there's a screen printed signature and then her actual hand signature as well. So yeah, and and under the frame you can see how it's numbered because I think there was only 50 that she screen printed of that. But yeah, she's been around
Great.
since the 70s doing amazing stuff. Was in the killer band
That's
called Destroy All Monsters too. Yeah.
fabulous, fabulous.
So that's all I had to say.
Okay, okay, okay. Again, Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us. I will go out with a closing thought too, but I wanted to let our friends, fans, and followers know that after tonight, Charles and I and Jim, we're going to be taking a short hiatus. We'll be back on air in about 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Nothing to be concerned about. Just going to reset, recharge, and we'll be back bigger than ever. Thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we'll see you on the next trip around the sun.
All right. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you very
everybody.
much, guys. Yes.
It was nice chatting with you.
Well, that's a wrap. Another fantastic episode of the podcast. You can find us on all the social media platforms, wherever you surf, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, Threads, wherever. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. And on our YouTube channel, don't forget to like, share, comment, and smash that subscribe button. If you're streaming audio for the podcast, you can find us wherever you get your favorite podcast programs. In the meantime, I like to tell everybody, take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time, peace.